Two people with the same credentials and experience may have very different approaches to a specific situation. They may agree on the problem, but not the solution. So who's right or wrong? A behavior interview reveals for you which one best aligns with your company core values and mission. So this isn't about right or wrong. This is about which way you would want them to go as a member of your team, aligning with your core values. After 40 years in childcare, I've experienced it all: the laughter, the challenges, and the burnout. I'm Debra Rinell, and I'm here to share the realities of childcare leadership with you. Starting as an unexpected entrepreneur facing the pressures of leadership, I've been through the same struggles that you are likely navigating today. More importantly, I discovered strategies to not just survive, but truly thrive in this rewarding field, and I'm ready to share it all with you. Ready to elevate your center and reignite your passion for childcare? Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Care and Connect, the Childcare Leadership Podcast. I'm Debra Rinell, and today we're diving into one of the key components of building a positive culture in childcare programs, the team pillar. We'll cover everything from hiring methods to role development, behavioral interviewing, and we'll discuss the value of exit interviews with insights on creating a supportive, mission-driven team that reflects the heart of your childcare program. We're going to start by discussing roles. When budgeting for your labor costs, it's useful to know the various types of roles in terms of employment. I know as childcare operators, we have similar names for the different roles in our programs: lead teachers, classroom assistants. We'll discuss roles as they pertain to operations in the next section, but for right now, I want to make sure that we're clear on roles in terms of employment according to the IRS. The IRS recognizes various types of role classification, and each one carries different ramifications for your taxes and therefore your budget. And that's why we're going to dive into this, because there are some things that you may be able to do to save yourself some payroll dollars and still have those roles fulfilled. The two most familiar roles to business owners are employees and contractors. There's been some recent changes in both classifications that are useful for us to examine. The employment relationship for the IRS is what really drives a lot of whether or not someone is an employee or whether somebody is a contractor. Employees and contractors are two distinct categories of workers, each with its own set of characteristics, legal implications, and responsibilities. Understanding the difference between them is crucial for businesses and individuals to ensure compliance with labor laws and taxation requirements. So let's look at the key differences between employees and contractors. Employees have a formal, ongoing relationship with their employer. They typically work under the direct supervision and control of the employer, following set schedules and using company resources. Employers have the authority, to dictate the work, provide training, and set the expectations. Contractors, which can also be known as freelancers or independent contractors, are typically hired for a specific project or a defined period. Now, that's not written in stone. They can work as a contractor for a long period of time. They maintain more independence and control over their work. That is kind of one of the key, the smell test for the IRS. Contractors often use their own tools and resources, and they have greater flexibility in how they complete the task assigned to them. So when it comes to taxation, employers are responsible for withholding income taxes, Social Security, Medicare taxes from employees' paychecks. Employers also contribute to these taxes on behalf of employees. You likely already know, if you're running your own childcare program, that you are required to match Social Security and Medicare. Contractors, on the other hand, are responsible for paying their own income taxes, including a self-employment tax, which covers their Social Security and Medicare. And you're not their employer, but you are not required to match that. They may need to make estimated tax payments throughout the year. Control and independence is another benchmark that the IRS looks at. Employers have more control over employees, including how, when, and where they work. Employers often provide detailed instructions and training. Contractors, on the other hand, have greater autonomy and independence in how they complete their work. They have more control over their work hours, methods, and tools. Long-term commitment is something else that the IRS may look at. Employment relationships tend to be typically long-term with the expectation of ongoing work, whereas a contractor's relationships can be project-based or temporary, and they may not lead to long-term commitments. That doesn't mean they won't, but these are some of the things that the IRS will look at when trying to determine if someone is an employee or a contractor. Legal and regulatory requirements. Employers are subject to various labor laws and regulations that protect the employee's rights, including anti-discrimination laws, labor standards, and workplace safety regulations. Contractors are generally considered self-employed, and their relationship with clients is governed by contracts. They're not covered by most employee-related laws and protections. It's important to know these distinctions because misclassifying a worker as an employee or contractor when they should be classified differently can lead to legal and financial consequences for both the employer and the worker. So it's essential for businesses to accurately classify workers and comply with labor laws to avoid legal issues and ensure fair treatment of workers. Consulting with legal or HR professionals is always advisable when making these determinations if you're just not sure. So you might be wondering, how does this apply in your childcare environment? Are there potential savings in understanding the parameters of each classification? Well, let's take a look. Role classification in childcare. Thinking about each of your roles, align them to each of the role classifications we just examined. Start with these roles for which your program is not required to have. How flexible are the hours? Must they report to anyone? Must they work on site? If yes, and they align with all other parameters in role classification, then you may save payroll tax dollars converting them to a contractor. If they don't quite align, are there any modifications that can be made to bring the role into contractor alignment? Let's use the example of your center cook. Can your cook menu plan, shop, and prep on their own schedule, leaving employees to finalize and serve meals and snacks? For some, the flexibility of being a contractor can provide your program with reliable assistance in key areas. So if the answer is that yes, your cook can do the menu planning, shopping, and meal prep on his or her own schedule, then they could easily be a contractor. This is somebody who basically organizes their time, and the agreement being that they will make sure that your program has the meals prepped and ready to go. Whether they do that in the middle of the night after hours, or whether they do that during the day when the center is open, is something to discuss between you and them. If they have that great deal of autonomy, there's a very likely chance you could simply hire them as a contractor instead of an employee. Some centers, generally those with multiple locations, often do contract their food services and their food preparation out, having that all delivered. But that doesn't mean that an independent center couldn't do the same if their cook was willing to be a contractor instead of an employee. And that would save the employer, the operator, on the tax matching, which would give them some wiggle room to maybe offer the cook as a contractor a flat rate for specific outcomes that would equate to a bit more than they're making as an employee. Now, if you do something like this, I want to encourage you to make sure that someone in this situation, let's just say a cook who's been acting as an employee, has a very clear understanding of the ramifications of becoming a contractor. And again, seeking legal HR services for both yourself and the employee who may be converted to a contractor would be in order. Another way that you can achieve the use of contractors and save on your budget is outsourcing. So for those roles that are required by your licensing agency, most of those are likely going to make sense as employees. It's difficult to allow teachers and even support staff to work their own hours, given service needs are driven by child attendance and prevailing ratio rules. But the next area to think about is, what tasks are your employees undertaking? Would some of those be better served and make more budget sense by having an outside service or contractor do them? This could free up your employees for other tasks or even reduce the number of employees that you need. So when you're thinking about this, think about yourself and your admin. What are your pain points? Enrollment tours, data entry, billing, collections? Can these be outsourced to a contractor or a virtual assistant service, such as the one that Childcare Management Solutions offers? On the topic of hiring, we want to explore key steps and best practices for hiring the right candidates for your organization. A successful hiring process not only brings in talented individuals, but it also fosters a positive and productive work environment. Before you hire, you want to understand your hiring needs. This goes back to defining each role. And after you've made the determination of what roles you could outsource, what roles you could utilize a contractor for, and now you know which roles you need to hire employees for. You want to define each role by clearly outlining the responsibilities, the qualifications, and the skill set required. You also want to consider your team dynamics. Remember, we're spending a lot of time talking about culture. In fact, team is one of the pillars in the culture quadrant of the Care For method. So we're always thinking about the bigger picture. So how will the new hire fit into the existing organizational structure? How will their role contribute to the organizational goals? You want to make these things a part of your blueprint for your hiring needs. When you're compelling your job description, you want to use language that accurately communicates the job's expectations and opportunities. You're going to attract your ideal candidate more easily by showcasing your organization's core values, right? If that's not something that someone looking to apply for a job, if they're not in line with that, you've already saved yourself time because they're likely not going to apply. Highlight the work environment and state your mission. We talk about this in culture. You want to get your core values and your mission out there. That way, you don't have to waste time interviewing people who will not align with those things. They will take themselves out of the running by simply not applying when this is a part of your hiring process and when you're creating job descriptions and your job advertising. In a ratio-driven industry, I know, I get it. It can be tempting to hire those who just simply check the required boxes of compliance, right? So we're going to look next into our behavioral interview module, and we'll do a deeper dive into the importance of resisting the temptation of hiring those that just check the boxes and the high cost of indulging it. When you're sourcing and attracting candidates, just wages and benefits are the most effective way to ensure a wide hiring pool of candidates, both those you are looking for and those you are not. Reviewing multiple applications and resumes only to find 1 out of 15 can be time-consuming and costly in terms of man hours, even yours. Do not discount your man hours as the owner or manager. Few hiring platforms cater to the small business that many childcare programs fall under. So developing your own jobs page is also costly, whether you're using a developer or attempting to create it yourself. Hiring's a tremendous cost of resources before you've even begun the interview. So let's take a look at some of the ways that you can reduce both. Employee referrals is a great way of sourcing and attracting candidates, especially when it's employees who are already aligned to your vision and your mission and your core values. Your current team should have members who exemplify, the values and work ethic that you're looking for. Like-minded individuals tend to attract. So odds are strong that those exemplary team members know others that are just like themselves. So why not tap into that resource by offering recruiting incentives to the very people you're hoping to find more of? Some ideas for incentives could be a small bonus for each candidate who lists them as a referral, a larger bonus for each candidate who makes it to the interview stage, maybe a final hiring bonus for both the candidate and the team member who referred them. And you could even go so far as offering a second bonus after their 90-day completion. Whether you use some or all of these ideas or you craft your own incentives, the return on your investment can reduce the cost of time spent on unreferred applicants. It builds the morale of current team members by asking to hire more people like them, and it gets you closer to your ideal candidate. I want to talk for a bit about hiring and recruiting services. These have become more popular as we see more technology becoming more and more a part of our lives and a part of our administrative responsibilities. So hiring platforms you can find on the internet, there's a number of them, and they allow you to place a digital help wanted ad. Their fees can be assessed in a few different ways. Per click, you're charged for every person who clicks on your ad. Per response, you're only charged for those who respond to your ad. Or per day, you're charged for each day your ad runs at a predetermined rate. And then there's a flat rate reach where you pay me a predetermined flat rate in exchange for an estimated reach. So for example, maybe it's $500 for 5 days, and they'll make a projection that you can expect 870 applicants from that. Recruiting services. So true recruiting services are just that. They're recruiters. Hiring platforms may upsell you on recruiting services, but they have a tendency to rely upon automation and keywords, where actual recruiters are going to take advantage of digital tools. A recruiter is a service that is dedicated to reviewing your applicants, often handle the decline and next stage communication for you, will make interview requests for you, and in some cases, the applicant can complete a video interview answering your pre-created questions before they're being invited to an in-person interview. All of these things, a significant time saver. And I can tell you, we used a recruiting service called AHA Recruiting Service, and it was wonderful. They helped us craft our help wanted ads. They went through and reviewed applicants, and they only pushed forward those that met the criteria we were looking for. If we were declining on someone or we wanted somebody to go to the next stage, all we had to do was put a check mark there, and they would reach out to the candidates, make the interview requests, and even assist with the scheduling. And then if for an additional fee, we wanted the applicant to complete a video interview, we would provide pre-created questions, and the applicant could answer those questions at home and then just upload their video interview. If we liked it, from there, of course, the next step was an in-person interview. So a recruiting service, it may cost you a bit more money, but I would argue that the time that they save you on the process makes it worth it. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of both, though, hiring and recruiting services. So with a hiring platform, the pros are going to be multiple platforms to choose from, because hiring platforms have a tendency to push your ad out to several different platforms. So it's getting more exposure. There's a cost for each platform used, so that can be in the cons list. You can select your fee schedule. That's definitely pros. But what you can afford may not net the desired outcomes that you're looking for. Hiring platforms have a significant reach, but the downside is that they don't screen which applicants meet criteria. And finally, hiring platforms, the applicants can contact you directly. The downside of that, of course, is that you could have an overflowing inbox of unwanted recurring follow-ups. Recruiting services, they typically place their ads on multiple platforms for one fee. So that is a positive for them. But they do use fewer services catering to smaller businesses. A lot of recruiting services are looking for larger corporations. So if you can find someone like we did with AHA that caters to a smaller business, it's a real plus. The pros of a recruiting service is that they're going to review the applicants for you. The negative of that is that they may not be as finely tuned to your industry as you. Although in our experience, they were more than willing to learn. And with each applicant, they got better and better at knowing what met our criteria. Another plus is that they communicate with the applicants on your behalf. So that's saving you a ton of time. And the only downside to that is if you prefer to communicate yourself, and I don't really know that that's a downside, you just simply tell them that you want to do that. They will be as involved as you want them to be or as hands-off as you want them to be. And then the last positive for the recruiting services is that they typically provide like a dashboard where you can go in and review all of your applicants in one place. The downside of that, if you consider it a downside, is of course there's going to be a learning curve involved in accessing the dashboard and how to integrate with the recruiting services processes. So which platform can you afford? That's going to depend in large part on how much time you or a team member are currently spending on recruiting and hiring. As providers, we tend to discount the cost of our time. So in determining what you can afford, think about what it would cost to replace you. Expected wage times hours spent on staying on top of hiring. Any platform or approach which nets you desired results, quality candidates, and will cost less than what you're spending now is going to be your target. And while you're likely aware of the multiple online hiring platforms available to you, one of the cons of a recruiter service is their willingness to work with small businesses. It's understandable. Budgets are more limited with small business, so the returns may not be worth their cost to provide you with these services. We really enjoyed working with AHA Recruiting Services, but we were one of their smaller clients. And I would tell you to stay tuned because it's definitely something Childcare Management Solutions is looking into. We would love to be able to offer this as an additional resource for childcare providers because I personally know the amount of time it takes to recruit, interview, hire, and train childcare candidates. So the next thing that I want to talk to you about is something that you may or may not have heard of before, but it's called the behavioral interview. And they seek to find candidates who not only possess the necessary skill set for the role that they may fill, but who are a good fit for your program's structure, core values, and mission. There's many tools today that can help you hone in more closely to what you're looking for. So how do behavior interviews differ from standard methods? Well, unlike traditional interviews that rely on hypothetical questions, behavioral interviews actually delve into a candidate's past experience to predict their future performance. This type of interview focuses on specific situations the candidate has encountered, the actions they took, and the results they achieved. Some people might ask, isn't this just a personality test? Well, a personality test assesses a candidate's traits, preferences, and tendencies based on their responses to a series of questions or statements. These tests aim to uncover aspects of a candidate's character, such as introversion, extroversion, emotional stability, conscientiousness, agreeableness, or openness. And personality tests are designed to predict, how individuals are most likely to behave in various situations. So while personality tests can suggest likely behavior interviews speak to actual response to historical events rather than the hypothetical. And that's one of the things that I like about them. You might be wondering now, okay, so what am I looking for in a behavior interview? The primary focus of these types of interview is to get the candidate to hone in on concrete examples of their past behavior and accomplishments. So you're going to ask questions which seek to understand how they've applied their skills, handled specific challenges relevant to the role that they might fill. Assess in their response how well they will fit in your company culture. So, have you ever hired to the resume or the fact that you found the candidate pleasant only to discover that they had no capacity for the role you were hiring for? Two people with the same credentials and experience may have very different approaches to a specific situation. They may agree on the problem, but not the solution. So, who's right or wrong? A behavior interview reveals for you which one best aligns with your company core values and mission. So, this isn't about right or wrong. This is about which way you would want them to go as a member of your team, aligning with your core values. So you want to identify their key competencies and qualities. So you're going to want to assess during the interview things like problem solving, teamwork, leadership, communication skills, and any other relevant traits. And there's actually a method, a structure that you can use to conduct a behavior interview known as the STAR method. STAR is an acronym for situation, task, action, and result. I'll say that one more time in case you're taking notes. Situation, task, action, result. So, situation. Tell me about a time when you were in charge and a child was being disruptive. The task is that the child was being disruptive. The situation is that they were in charge when this task presented itself. Action. What did you do? Result. What was the outcome? Ask your prepared questions and encourage candidates to provide detailed responses. Avoid yes/no questions. Use phrases like tell me about a time when or describe an instance where, and pay close attention to their responses. Take notes if necessary and ask follow-up questions to clarify their answers or get any additional details. If the candidate is being vague or giving you a lot of general answers, ask them to provide more specific information. Make sure that they are giving you concrete examples of actions taken with quantifiable outcomes. If you're not familiar with conducting a behavior interview, and many of us aren't, it might be easy to slip into old habits. There's key behaviors of yours that you will want to be mindful of throughout the interview, in fact, that we're all guilty of. The first one is me to a T. Avoid too much sharing. In attempting to put someone at ease or create a warm environment, we may unintentionally lead the candidate to respond in one way or another. I am so guilty of this. I don't know how many times in my early years when I would do this, I would really like someone or I could tell they were nervous, and I was practically answering the interview questions for them. Ask your prepared questions and actively listen to their response. I'm going to encourage you to avoid doing your interviews off the cuff. Your questions need to be prepared and you need to be looking for some specific answers. Ask for details and specifics. Do not ask yes or no questions. Require them to have a conversation with you so that you can get a feel for this person and how well they will fit with your program and your existing team. Ask the same questions of each candidate applying for the same role. For one thing, you want to ensure fairness and provide a foundation for candidate assessment. When you're comparing one candidate against another, if you haven't been asking the same questions in the same format, one, it isn't fair, but two, you've also robbed yourself of a baseline that you can compare each one against. And you want to schedule adequate time between your interviews to assess and rate each candidate while their responses are fresh in your mind. If you're doing back to back to back to back interviews, it's going to be very difficult for you to remember a lot of the specifics of the interview. So you've hired, you found your team, and as you're developing your core values and your mission and you're growing your program, obviously it goes without saying that you are going to lose some of your team members. Either you've managed them out because they weren't working out, or they have discovered that they do not align with your values and your mission, and that your program may not be a good fit for them. This doesn't mean anybody's wrong. This is about alignment. So this raises the question of exit interviews and their value. An exit interview can be a controversial topic when it comes to its efficacy. So we're going to look at arguments for and against exit interviews and offer you our own hybrid version of this practice that is specific to childcare providers. So the pros and cons of exit interviews: feedback for improvement. Exit interviews provide an opportunity to gather candid feedback from departing employees about their experience, concerns, any suggestions they have. And the feedback can help organizations identify areas for improvement in their processes, their policies, and even their workplace culture. Identify patterns. Over time, conducting an exit interview can help identify recurring issues or trends that you may need to address. If the same issues are being raised in exit interviews repeatedly, then it's probably pretty likely that that's an issue that you're going to have to take some action on and modify if it's causing people to leave your program. You can maintain relationships. Exit interviews can help maintain a positive relationship with departing employees, and it shows that the organization values their input, that you leave a more positive impression, and it leads to goodwill and maybe even referrals. And legal compliance. In some cases, exit interviews can help organizations fulfill legal requirements and address potential legal issues. One example would be you could document the reasons for termination in ensuring transparency and fairness. So some of the cons are going to be honesty concerns. Employees may be reluctant to provide honest feedback during exit interviews. They may fear repercussions or that they're burning bridges. They may give you generic or non-specific responses, making it kind of challenging to gather any meaningful insights. And the timing of exit interviews, they're being conducted when the employee's already made the decision to leave. So it makes it too late to address their concerns and retain their talent. I don't know about you, but when it's an employee that I don't want to lose, I would rather that they know that they can come to me with any concerns or issues that are significant enough to cause them to think of leaving, rather than finding out about it after they've already resigned. There's also a limited scope to exit interviews because they focus on the departing employee's perspective, and so they might not capture the whole picture of workplace issues. Current employees may have different perspectives or additional insights than that employee who's chosen to leave or been asked to leave. Bias and subjectivity can also be an issue with exit interviews. It can be biased, subjective. It relies on the individual employee's perception and their experience, and it may not accurately reflect the objective reality of the workplace. And inaction is sometimes one of the things. Sometimes organizations will collect feedback from exit interviews, but they fail to take meaningful action on the feedback they received. And this can lead to frustration among current and departing employees. So, childcare management solutions, we feel that you can take kind of a hybrid approach for exit interviewing. You can be proactive and prudent with the focus method that we've discussed in other podcasts. Focus being the acronym for Family Outreach, Child Unity and Safety. And we encourage the focus method to be a part of performance reviews. And it integrates very nicely with some of the performance review platforms out there. But exit interviews are going to be most effective when team members have had adequate training and onboarding. Timely and fair performance reviews were conducted consistently. They trust that their feedback and opinion matter. They feel safe to share constructive criticism. They've been a strong performer and a valued asset to the program, and they were not party to any altercation prior to resignation. So the most useful feedback you'll ever receive is going to come from those who share your values and are aligned with your mission. It always comes back to that, doesn't it? The key to a successful exit interview is that it be held with a valued and trusted member of your team whose departure is not the result of their being unhappy or angry. Using focus in conjunction with the Care For method staff journey, those team members you hope to have with you for years will feel acknowledged and appreciated, and they'll trust that you value them as an asset to your organization. And through focus, those who do not align with your core values and mission, that will be revealed, providing you a pathway for an amicable separation absent of hostilities. So in this way, the exit interviews needn't be awkward or unhelpful. This has been another episode of Care and Connect, the Child Care podcast. I'm Debra Rinell. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me on this journey through this rewarding world of childcare leadership. Remember that we're all navigating this together, whether you're feeling challenged or feeling motivated. Know that when you take time to be the visionary of your program, you can elevate your center and ignite your passion. Until next time, I'm Debra Rinell, reminding you to take care of yourself with the same dedication you give to others.